Hello everyone, my name is Dan and I will be your Design Journey Art Class expert for drawing in perspective. In this session we will be covering many perspective drawing techniques, including constructing inclined planes, cylinders and combining volumes. As always, to follow along with this session, you will need a set of pencils, maybe a sharpener, an eraser, a ruler, and some paper to draw on. Now, whilst these sessions can stand alone, I advise watching the previous ones if you haven't already. So you should by now be familiar with drawing in perspective, and this session is going to expand on what we have previously looked at, as I'm going to show you many perspective drawing techniques and also how to use those boxes we have been drawing to construct more complex volumes. Now, first of all, I want to start by showing you a very useful technique for dividing and multiplying planes in perspective, and I have used this technique already in many of the drawings I have created throughout these sessions, but here I want to go over it in more depth. This technique is one that you will often use when drawing in perspective, and you will need to know this as we progress forward. So what I am drawing out here is a flat plane, and next to it I will draw this same plane but in perspective. This is so I can show you this technique on the flat plane first, and then show you how it is done when drawing in perspective. So the first thing we will do is divide these two planes and find their center point. And here on this flat plane, that would be simple. But in perspective, remember that we have to consider the foreshortening, meaning the half that would be further back would appear shorter. Of course we could estimate this, but we don't have to thanks to this useful technique that involves firstly taking a diagonal line to each corner like so. This will give you that center point, and you can then draw in your vertical and horizontal lines. So the same applies to perspective. I draw two diagonal lines to each corner to find the center point, and then I can add my horizontal lines. In this case, it would converge to the vanishing point as well, and then I can add the vertical line. You now have divided this plane up in perspective. Now we are not done yet with this example though, because I want to show you how to multiply this plane and create another one that is of the same size next to it. So again, on this flat projection, that's easy because I could just measure the width and draw another one at the same size, but in perspective, this multiplied plane would appear smaller. So to multiply this plane, we need to divide it up as we have done already, and find this horizontal halfway line and locate the point in which it crosses the side of the plane. What we need to do is firstly extend these top and bottom lines of the plane, because we know that this will be the same height for our multiplied plane. I then take a line from the bottom corner through that midway point on the side of the plane, and I extend this until it meets the top lines. At this point I can then draw in my vertical line, and I have officially multiplied that plane and they are both the same size. So let's do the same in perspective, and this can also be done in the opposite direction. It's a technique that you will rely on a lot when drawing, and we are going to be making use of it as we move forward. So now let's cover another technique and take a look at how to construct some inclined planes. And it's important to be able to do this because you might need to do so when you are creating a drawing. Maybe you are creating a drawing of a building and you want to add a pitched roof on top of that, or you are drawing a sloping environment. I'm going to start by drawing a box in 2 points perspective. This is something you should be familiar with now, as we have covered this in previous sessions. Now that this box has been drawn out, I want to add a pitched roof to this. So how do I do that? Well, first of all, I need to decide on how steep I want my pitched roof to be, and this is determined by the height of the ridge for the roof. So what I will do is divide this side up as we have just looked at to find that halfway line. I now extend this vertical line upwards to a height that I am happy with for my pitched roof. Again, it really depends on how you want this to look. The higher your line here, the steeper the incline, so I will just leave mine around here. I can transfer the height of this line across to the other side by drawing a line from the top of it to the right vanishing point. This vertical line on the other side will then meet that. So we have just created the line for the ridge of our pitched roof, and now we need to add the inclined planes at either side. All we have to do is take a line from each corner of the box to the top of that vertical line, and now we have a pitched roof. Now before we move on, let me tell you something about inclined planes that might at first be confusing. The inclined lines also converge to their own vanishing point that exists on a vertical horizon line, which is at the vanishing points that we have already. Now that might sound really confusing, but don't worry, it's pretty simple in practice. As you can see in this example, the edges of the inclined planes converge to a vanishing point on a vertical horizon line. This set of lines here converge downwards off the page. It's good to know these things when you are drawing, and so have a go at drawing some more inclined planes in perspective. So that is how to draw inclined planes in perspective, and we will do more of that later because now we need to look at how to draw cylinders. But to draw a cylinder, we firstly need to learn how to draw an ellipse. Now to draw a cylinder, we need to be able to draw an ellipse, and an ellipse is a circle in perspective, and to draw a circle, we need to draw a square. So to draw an ellipse in perspective, we need a square in perspective. Here again I have a flat plane, this time it is a square, and next to it I have the same plane drawn in perspective. The best way to draw a circle is to do so within a square, and so I start by dividing this up as we have done before. I will also do the same to the plane in perspective. Now I can use these divisions to assist me when drawing out the circle. It would be tangent with each side of the square. I also use a compass here to help me draw a perfect circle. Now I will do the same in perspective and draw out an ellipse. I just freehand this, and drawing ellipses can be a pain to get right, but with practice it does get easier. So this is how we will be drawing ellipses moving forward. So now let's take a look at how to construct a cylinder, which will require us to draw some ellipses. To draw a cylinder, we need to draw some ellipses, one at either side, and you might have guessed already, the best way to construct a cylinder is to do so within a box. So here I will construct a rectangular box with square sides in 2 points perspective. Now that I have this box drawn out, I can divide each side up and use these divisions to help me draw in the ellipses. Again, we have to do this at each side. The next step is to join these together like so, and you have now constructed a cylinder in perspective. Have a go at constructing some more cylinders like this in perspective. So all of this that we are looking at is going to be put to use when we create some final drawings, but now I want to spend some time talking about how to construct some more complex volumes using what we now know. I'm going to construct a more complex form here, which will be a combination of various volumes such as boxes and cylinders. So here I start by establishing the position of the horizon line. Here I will place this above, and I will draw out a box in 2 points perspective. The left vanishing point will be to the side there, but the right vanishing point will be off the page, meaning I have to estimate the direction of my lines and try and aim them towards that. So here I draw out this box, and once I have done that, I am going to add another box on the front of this. This is what you will often find yourself doing when drawing. You'll be combining boxes and volumes to block out your drawing in perspective. Once this box has been added on the front, I take 2 lines from its corners to the edge of the larger box behind it to create an inclined plane. I am now going to add a cylinder on top of the larger box, and remember the best way to do this is to draw out a box and then draw a cylinder at either side. So that is what I'm going to do. I draw out a box and divide up its top and bottom plane. These dividing lines will then help me to draw in 2 ellipses. To finish this cylinder, I join up these 2 ellipses, and I have now constructed a more complex form using these simple techniques we have looked at, and this could be the block out for a building or anything else that you might want to draw. So I hope you have found all of what we have covered so far in this session useful. I am now going to create a final drawing using what we have looked at. I am going to be creating this drawing of a farm, which includes a barn, a silo for the cylinder, and some additional structures. So as always, feel free to follow along. This one might get a bit technical in some areas, but again, I'll do my best to explain the entire process. So I am going to be working in 2 points perspective for this example, and I will start by placing the horizon line around here. The right vanishing point will be on the page here, but the left vanishing point will be off the page, but that's nothing new to us now. Now I will construct a large box in 2 points perspective, as we have done many times throughout these sessions. I will now divide up the front plane and start to draw out the shape of what is going to be a barn. So I have divided this up, and now further above this plane I'm going to draw another line. Where this crosses the diagonal dividing lines is where I take a line from the point at which the horizontal halfway line crosses the edge of the front plane. This will create a slightly inclined line on either side, and at the end of those I will join them up at the center point at the top of this front plane and create another set of inclined lines, and that will give us this shape for the roof of this barn. So now it's a case of transferring this shape across to the back plane of the box, and this can easily be done by taking some lines across the side planes of the box from the shape on the front plane to the back plane. Here I continue to transfer these points across to that back plane using the right vanishing point. Once I have done this, I can join them up and create the inclined planes for the roof. And don't worry too much about doing this on the other side, as we are not going to see it from this angle. So now it's time to add a smaller box onto the side of this larger one, and I'll extend this out to a point I am happy with. I use both vanishing points to do this, although I do have to estimate the direction of my lines as I aim them towards that left vanishing point that is off the page. Once I have this smaller box drawn out, I can divide these 2 planes and add a pitched roof onto this. Again, we are repeating all of the techniques that we have looked at in this session. Now it's time to draw another box behind this one, and this will be used to construct a cylinder, and this will be the silo tower for the farm that I am drawing here. So I draw out a taller box here using the vanishing points, and I divide up this top plane to then draw an ellipse. Now I don't have to do that on the bottom plane here, because the bottom of this is hidden behind the smaller section of the building I have drawn. Instead, draw an ellipse on top and then extend some lines at either side of it upwards to create a plane that will be used to draw out the dome. For this, we just draw out half an ellipse like this, and we can leave it like that. So most of these structures have been drawn out, and now it's a case of me adding some details such as the doorway for the barn and some of the surrounding environment. I will also add an overhang on the barn roof, along with outlining this block out so that you can see it more clearly as we start to render the drawing. So that is how we can use those simple techniques to construct boxes which come together to form more complex volumes that are overall more interesting than just simple boxes. But remember that drawing boxes are what allows us to construct all of these more interesting volumes. And so now I'm going to use these pencils and start rendering this drawing. I'm going to begin by drawing some outlines for the wooden planks for the barn. This is similar to that other texture I had created when I had drawn the other barn in a previous session, except here these lines are more precise, and I do this along the entire front plane before then shading over it. As I shade over these lines, they still remain visible, and towards the bottom of the barn I add some brickwork, which are lines that are drawn in the opposite direction. To shade in the roof of the barn, I do some cross-hatching, firstly drawing lines in one direction in a line with the angle of this inclined plane, and then I draw lines over this in the other direction. These will head to the right vanishing point, and then I shade over this as well. I do the same for the roof on the smaller section of the building, as well as rendering the walls for that. When it comes to shading in the silo here, I apply a little less pressure as I want this to be lighter. I also wrap some more lines around this cylinder. These are referred to as contour lines, and you'll often want to indicate the form of an object by using lines which wrap around them. I also shade in some of the surrounding environment, like these haystacks here to the right and the trees in the background. At this point I've had to produce this texture for the trees in almost every drawing I've created so far, so you should be familiar with this as well. I create small circular motions with the pencil, and these come together to form a texture that is used for foliage or anything like the leaves for trees or bushes. I start to shade in the ground as well, and once that is done I can swap over to the 6B pencil, putting the 2B pencil aside, and like usual I start to work into the image as a whole, rendering various areas and making some adjustments, and I do this until I have a result that I am happy with. This is the final drawing, a farm drawn in 2 points perspective. So there we go, I hope you have enjoyed this session of the Design Journey art class. If you have created any drawings, then be sure to share them over on Instagram and use the hashtag #MyDesignJourney. Also tag me at DanBearshaw as well so I can see what you create. Now this session was full of a lot of useful techniques that you can put to use when drawing, and I'd really recommend trying to construct some more complex volumes by combining boxes and cylinders. You'll be surprised at what you can create, and then you can use them to block out your drawings in perspective. But with all that being said, thank you for watching and joining me in this session.